Hello everybody, back for another video. I apologize for doing it inside. I know the lighting is horrible. I'd much rather be doing it outside, but yeah, there's a reason I can't right now. I don't like doing videos in front of people, and my neighbor has this fat cunt mooching off him for the last couple of months. Every time I go outside, she goes outside too. So anyhow, long story short, I apologize for the lighting. Just can't quite get it right in here. I would have the overhead light on, but it provides so much glare from the top down that it's all messed up. Anyway, so wanted to do a continuation of this morning's fishing trip videos and talk a little bit about 9/11 and Irma, the hurricane or the tropical storm now that it's been downgraded to, and about gun confiscation. Now, excuse me, I grew up around guns, using guns, working with guns, and never really thought too much about it. Even though there was, people were always saying, oh yeah, the government's going to be trying to take our guns someday. Oh, sure, yeah, I thought, okay, whatever, but I got busy in my younger days, working 2-3 jobs at a time. Sometimes I didn't have time for guns. It's not that I wasn't interested, I just was busy doing other things. And then when I moved into the city, it just didn't cross my mind. I mean, I knew people had them, and then whenever I was asked, why I don't have one, my answer was just, well, I don't feel I need one in the city. If I were out in the country, yeah, I'd have a rifle or a shotgun for varmints or whatnot, but I just didn't really feel a pressing need for one. And then, of course, as I got older, that changed. I started thinking more about why we have a Second Amendment in this country. Even though I'm an anarchist and, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution means something different to me than it does to most people, I still think that people ought to be able to defend themselves. They ought to have that right. And I don't think it needs to be written down on a piece of paper or voted on by a certain group of people. I mean, that's one of these inalienable rights. In other words, you're born with that right. You're born with an instinct for survival. Hopefully. Hopefully. That's normal. Okay? That's not extreme. That's not outlandish. That's not trained behavior. That's not programming. That's normal. Your instinct for survival and self-preservation is perfectly normal. And it's being bred out of the United States citizen. Particularly, and yes, I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this. I don't care. This is my opinion, and I have a right to my opinion. It's specifically being bred out of white males in the United States, okay? Survival instinct, masculine traits, competitiveness, the will or the curiosity about violence, the will to be violent in the right circumstances, the desire to study violence, the desire to be familiar with violence to a certain degree so that you can engage in self-preservation, so that you can survive. That's being bred out of white men in America and in Europe. Basically white men, okay? Now, you don't see that happening in other cultures, okay? In black culture in America, thuggery is celebrated. Violence is celebrated. Like, the initiation of violence. In other words, the thug that starts the shit is celebrated, okay? If you're white and you start the shit, if you start the fight, you're always in the wrong. And 9 times out of 10, if you're white and you defend yourself, you're still in the wrong. Likewise, 9 times out of 10, if you defend yourself and you're black, it doesn't matter what you were doing, you're in the right because you're black. Yeah, that bullshit. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you viewers who can stomach my outrageous, outlandish, extreme views. Yeah, so far off the Richter scale, they blow people's tops. Well, so back in 2005, when Katrina happened, guns were confiscated forcibly, okay, and people are still unable to recover their personal property stolen from them by the state to this day. You know, these many years later, 10, 11 years later. So these people's rights were violated in a major way that is completely against everything this country was built on, against everything this country stands for. And now, with Hurricane Irma, as I'm sure most of you already know, gun confiscation is going on. At least the executive order was drawn up and issued. Now, I don't know if anybody has actually had weapons confiscated, but it wouldn't surprise me that that is happening and it's not being reported by the media. Of course, they're not going to tell you this. They're going to issue an executive order on the DL, you know, because they have to issue it. They have to announce it once, at least, somewhere. You know, maybe in some far-off remote corner of the country, just once. They have to air that announcement by law. The government's required to air the announcement that they have come up with an executive order or a decision to do X, Y, and Z. In this case, it's gun confiscation, and I have yet to see an incident of it on film or in the news, but that's probably because it's being hidden from you. You're probably not going to be allowed to film any of that. Officers, any Leos that are involved, I mean, hands-on, going door to door, grabbing people's weapons, putting them in cuffs, hauling them into the truck, hauling them off to FEMA camps, those guys are probably under orders to have all communications turned off, radio silence, etc. Certainly no video. Absolutely no video. I have no doubt that there are orders from on high that you do not film the act of confiscating private citizens' guns, stealing their guns. Well, in 2005, I became a believer and I started telling people, hey, the government really is going to take your guns. They really are going to confiscate your weapons. Not those of criminals, of course. Criminals ain't going to give them up. So your best bet, if you want to keep your guns, is to be a criminal, probably. You know, don't tell anybody where you live. Scratch them serial numbers. Get those serial numbers off your gun. Better yet, get rid of those guns. Get some new unserialized weapons. Unregistered, unserialized. Whatever you got to do. But I'm telling you, it's not going to stop with Irma. Irma is just another excuse that the government can use to further its agenda, which is to disarm the citizens of the United States. Now, it's going to be a long time before we're all disarmed, if ever. Okay? But I'm no longer under the illusion that we can never be disarmed. You know why? Because people aren't resisting. Look what happened in Katrina. Who resisted? If anybody did, you never heard about it. Okay? If any cops got shot by homeowners who said, oh, hell no, you're not taking my gun, from my cold, dead motherfucking hands, bang! You haven't heard about it. Right? But that's all it would take. I mean, me, for instance, if I had something to confiscate, and I got that knock on the door, and they announced, you know, we're here, they announced, well, we're here to pick up your guns. And they try to take them at gunpoint. Well, hey, and a couple of officers get shot, I'd probably lose. I would lose, you know. My weapons would be confiscated anyway, I'd wind up dead. But you know what? Those officers that got shot, they wouldn't forget that, especially if they lived. They would never ever forget that. They'd reflect on that later in life and go, gee man, that guy shot me because I was trying to take away his guns. I was trying to take away his method of self-preservation. Okay? Now, those individuals, if they survive it, are going to remember it. And do you think the cops are going to go to my neighbor's house after that? Probably not. Because here's a fact for you. And remember, as Ben Shapiro says, Facts don't care about your feelings. As I say it, facts don't give a flying fuck about your feelings. Okay? So here's a fact. There is not an equal amount of government to the citizenry. Okay? You take all the law enforcement officers in the United States, all of them, from every branch, every department, all of them, 100% of them. You take 100% of every person that works for any form of government, and I mean any and all, down from your local municipality, all the way up to President Trump. You take 100% of all the individuals that constitute government, including the law enforcement, all three branches, and the citizenry outnumbers them. Do you know by how much? By an enormous amount. 100,000 to 1, at least. 100,000 to 1. Okay, maybe that's a little high. Even if it was just 1,000 to 1. You get the picture. If people actually said, you know what, no, you're not taking my guns from me, and if you try, I'm going to shoot you. Gun confiscation would not work in this country, and it would be over just like that. But the reason it's going to be successful is because everybody's going to say, oh, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm not doing anything wrong. Here, government, take my guns. I'll let you protect me. Well, it's going to be that government that says, oh, hey, thank you for your weapons. And as soon as you're not looking, turns around and stabs you in the back.